I'd like to introduce today Terrence Zeckman, and I think he goes by Terry. So Terry Zeckman has been with Fortinet for 7 years. He's worked in SMB and commercial and enterprise and across the gamut of customers. He's got a wealth of security experience, and he's one of the experts in Fortinet, and we're excited to have him with us today to present the NextGen Firewall from Fortinet. So without further ado, Terry, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Bruce, and thanks again to everyone for coming out today. Hopefully it'll be worth your while. This is going to be mostly a technical overview. Here's some kind of marketing slides at the beginning, but they're light and we'll blast through them pretty quick. And then hopefully at the end we'll get to actual product demonstration, and I'll walk you through what an actual Fortigate Next Generation Firewall looks like and some of the features that we have in there that you might be interested in. So who is Fortinet? Fortinet's been around for over 20 years now. We're publicly traded on the NASDAQ and the S&P. We have over 50 integrated security products, and that all started with our next generation firewall. And one of our claims to fame is we do our own custom ASIC security processors, right? So that increases our performance, and it also decreases the price to get that performance. We have 1,200 patents globally, almost 12,000 employees, almost 600,000 customers worldwide, and we've shipped over 8 million firewalls across the world. Here's a quick slide on some of our security products. So we play in a lot of ponds here. Security is important to us, and our flagship product, of course, is our firewall product.
So this is a bit of a trivia question for the audience. What letter do most of the Fortinet products start with?
We don't spend a lot of money on marketing, so all of our products are kind of like Forta and then whatever it does.
That makes it really easy to remember. Thanks.
So what is Gartner? So a lot of people like to use Gartner to help them point them at solutions they might be interested in. Here's 3 of the Magic Quadrants, 2 from 2020. These are all 3 are from 2021. And you can see we've got the WAN edge infrastructure on the left, which is what we would call SD-WAN, right, in normal speak. We've got wired and wireless networking in the center, and then we have network firewalls on the right. Now, the interesting thing, you can see that Fortinet's a leader in 2 of these, and we're visionary here in wired and wireless. For Fortinet, this is the same product. This is a Fortigate firewall, right? So whether you're using that firewall as your next-gen edge security solution, or you're using the SD-WAN features built in that firewall, or you're using that firewall to manage and control your Fortinet switches and wireless access points, this is all the same product, right? So we're pretty proud of that we can do that all with one product. And this product doesn't require any additional licensing to utilize like the SD-WAN features or the switch and wireless features. That's all part of the base product. The new thing for Gartner is their cybersecurity mesh architecture. In the past, everybody was focused on best of breed solutions, which is great, but it creates a lot of overhead for management because now we've got all these different management platform or panes of glass that we have to look at to manage all these different solutions. With Fortinet, we've consolidated a lot of that management, and even with our products that don't use the same management interface, when you're looking at it, say like for email, it looks like every other Fortinet product, right? So management is very uniform. The terminology is the same. We have a lot of integration between our products. So we're sharing that threat intelligence internally. A little bit more on that. So, and this is my slide. I like to call it the Fortinet Fabric Universe because Fabric's a marketing term that we like to use. And for us, that starts with our Fortigate firewall at the top. And then our management solution, FortiManager. So if you've got hundreds or thousands of locations with firewalls that you need to manage, you'd probably want to do that from one place. And that's our FortiManager. And then our FortiAnalyzer is our log consolidation and reporting tool, right? And it's just for Fortinet products, right? So this is part of our native universe. And then I already mentioned that you can manage switches and APs with that. Well, if you're managing your switch and your AP with your Fortigate, you can also manage that configuration centrally with one FortiManager, right? So for distributed enterprise customers, this is a big win because we don't have different solutions to manage these different parts of each one of those 1,000 remote branches. We also have FortiClient, which was organically grown. That's our endpoint solution. We've got FortiSandbox, right? So this is a tool that our internal teams used on the security side to detonate files that you may receive through your firewall or through your email appliance or through your web application firewall. We'll detonate that, see the behavior, and then we'll mark that as either malicious, suspicious, or good. And we got FortiAI, which is like FortiSandbox on steroids. So if you need to process hundreds of thousands of files per minute, that's a tool that you can use. Now, seeing that our customers have diverse environments, we recognize that if we want to be more to our customers, we need to support more devices than just Fortinet. So products that have come to us through acquisition, like SIM and network access control and security orchestration, we purchased products that aligned. They already worked with our products, but they also work with the products our customers already have, right? If you've got 1,000 Cisco switches, probably not looking to replace those anytime soon. So we've got solutions that marry with our organic solutions that will also manage what you have in place today. So where does all that threat intelligence come from? It comes from FortiGuard Labs. So we do all of our own threat intelligence, right? So we're not tacking on some kind of third-party solution to get you the security you need. This is all developed in-house from the 8 million, security appliances we have dispersed. That intelligence comes back, it gets processed by our labs, and then it goes back out to you. And I also want to mention that we partner with Cyber Threat Alliance, which most of the major firewall vendors are in there, Cisco, Palo Alto, Fortinet. We're all charter members of the Cyber Threat Alliance, the World Economic Forum, Interpol, and NCI. So this is a quick little slide on kind of like what that security looks like. And you can see we've got FortiGates, we've got FortiProxy, we've got XDR, we've got webmail, all these different products. They're feeding intelligence back to our security teams, and then we're using that to analyze threats across the globe, and then push out our security updates to our appliances. So let's talk more about next generation firewalls. In the past, we used to call them unified threat management firewalls. But really, this is a consolidation of security tools. Where in the old days, we'd have a firewall that did firewalling, and then we had, like a proxy web filter appliance that did our web filtering for us. And then we had another appliance that did intrusion prevention. And maybe some other thing that did, antivirus on the fly. We've consolidated that all, and most major vendors have now. All those features are part of a single appliance. We also layer in, we've got VPN as part of our appliance. Again, like SD-WAN and switch and Wi-Fi control. We don't charge anything for that. It's built in, whatever the capacity of that unit is, you're good to go. And we also do SSL deep packet inspection on our appliance. And I mentioned that we do our own custom security ASICs. Well, we do that inspection on those ASICs, so it's not burdening the CPU, which is doing other tasks. So what happens to a firewall when you start turning on security inspection? Or your performance goes down, right? And we all publish our performance numbers. on our data sheets, and you can find Fortinet's performance numbers by Googling Fortigate data sheet, right? And it'll show you all our appliances. We publish all these numbers. We do this testing with an IXIA breaking point using their enterprise mix, which is a proprietary mix of traffic that IXIA uses to evaluate the performance of security devices, right? So we take those numbers right out of IXIA, we put it right on our data sheet, we publish it for everyone to see. The important thing here is the performance on your traffic is directly affected by what security profiles and what inspection you're doing on that traffic. So if you've got a policy that's just doing straight firewall, like maybe it's a backup server device that's copying over last night's backup to a disaster recovery location, probably don't want to do, like antivirus, or you don't need to do application control inspection on any of that traffic, right? Because it's just a straight backup to a DR site. So you can get straight firewall throughput on the traffic hitting that firewall policy. But if you have another policy that's going out to the internet and we've got users on there, we want to do antivirus, we want to do web filtering, we want to do IPS, we may turn on all of the security profiles. Well, then that traffic's going to see a hit, but only that traffic hitting that, right? And then you can expect, like, hey, if we've got full threat protection enabled here, this box should give us about 1 gig of throughput, right? And another thing that we publish is our SSL inspection throughput numbers, right? So this is irrelevant of whatever else you have turned on. This is the throughput you can see once you turn on SSL inspection, and it's usually higher than whatever you'd have in threat inspection. So we're expecting that if you're buying one of our boxes, you're going to turn everything on, because most customers do. So what the performance is going to be of that box in your environment. So what does it look like inside a Fortigate firewall? Well, we've got CPU, right? Everybody's got CPU, Intel CPU. We've got multiple interfaces. We've got a switch ASIC in there that connects those interfaces to the CPU and to our security processors. Now, typically, most of our products have a network security processor. This does the firewall, like the layer 4 IPsec, the layer 4 firewall performance. And then we have content processor. The content processor does all of our inspection. And I'll break that down a little bit more in the next 2 slides. So network processor, our current model is the MP7 that just came out 2 years ago now. But that's in charge of setting up all those layer 4 firewall connections. And our MP7, it's rated up to 200 gigs. So 100 gigs in, 100 gigs out, and it can do 100 gig flows. Some other things it does, it can do session setup, stateful inspection, VXLAN, CAPWAP. We support IPv6. Moving on to the security inspection, we do that on our content processor. So this is where the intrusion prevention, the application control, or antivirus, and our SSL inspection gets offloaded to our content processor chip, right? And we stack these chips inside the box to increase the performance of the box. So our security ASIC chips aren't something that we've come to like overnight. This is something we've been developing for 20 years. It kind of shows you the evolution, right? So to come out with a network processing chip, it takes 5 or 6 years of development time to bring that out. The content processor chips have a little bit shorter cycle, right? So we can see 2 to 4 years on a content processor. And then on our desktop appliances, we use what we call system of a chip. So the system on the chip combines the network and content processors all in one chip with CPU. And you'll find those in our desktop models. Software evolution, right? Everybody lives and dies by firmware. That's where all the security features are developed. And you can see up until about 2016, our 5.4 release, we were on like a kind of a 2-year cycle With the 5.4, we've done a major upgrade every year to our operating system. I don't have 2022 in there, but Q1 2022, we came out 7.2. And each one of these major releases sees enhancements in the security features, but new features as well. And I was a Fortinet customer before I came to work to Fortinet. And one of the things that I found really valuable for me was that I could actually see that maintenance I was paying on my security appliances, there was development going in to that product, right? And I was getting that development as part of my maintenance subscription. Wasn't I had to go out and buy a new product to get that. It came out when the new release came out, I could upgrade and I got all those new features and to pay an additional licensing fee or anything. So what's our next gen firewall line look like? Well, I mentioned that, we've got everything from desktop units all the way up to the chassis units, right? So if you need blades worth of firewall, we do have those devices. And we have an immense selection to choose from in between. So we can really pick a firewall appliance that's going to meet your needs. And we're not going to have to say like, hey, this firewall is a little too small for you, but the price is right. This firewall is way too big for you, but you're kind of on the edge. We've got a lot of resolution in the devices to fit your needs. And we provide, hardware, but we also have that available as a VM. I've got a little bit more on that on an upcoming slide. And just to point out too, our biggest series, our 6000 series, this is the 6000 series is a chassis firewall in an appliance. So this is a collection of Fortigate blades that drop in here. We've got our own session load balancer that distributes traffic across those blades. We have school districts, with hundreds of thousands of students using our 6000 series firewalls. And if you need something even bigger, 7000, we can support a lot of traffic through our 7000 series if you need that. And virtual appliances, so you can deploy our FortiGates in your own private cloud using VMware, KVM, Hyper-V, Nutanix. You can also deploy them in the public cloud environment, Amazon, Azure, Google, Oracle, Allium. And the really cool thing about our VM appliances is you buy that license and you can deploy that license wherever you want. It doesn't really matter. It's only CPU and memory. Those are the only constraints. So if you start out with a deployment in your own private cloud and you decide you need to move to the public cloud, you can take that license with you. So that's a big benefit. Or if you're not sure what your use is going to be, we have pay-as-you-go models on all the major public cloud platforms. So let's talk about FortiCare. This is, we mentioned it, FortiCare is what you purchase. This is the security from our FortiGuard labs. But this is the support side, right? So now we're deployed, we've got questions, we need help. We've got 1,400 team members in that support organization. We provide 24/7 technical support around the globe. And let's take a look at what those security subscriptions look like. So these are all the different security subscriptions that you can add onto a FortiGate. Any of these are available a la carte if you need to go that way. But most of our customers will purchase this as a bundle. We have our advanced threat protection, which gets you antivirus, FortiSandbox Cloud, IPS, your FortiCare, right? That's your 24/7 support, your application control, and then we build up from there. So our enterprise protection includes things like our Internet of Things detection service, but really I see like OT customers end up going to enterprise protection. If they're looking for that industrial IPS database, that's included in there. The other thing that we have in there, and I'll show this to you in the demo, is our security rating service. So the security rating service is something that we have built in. It's a database of Fortinet best practices, and we align that with NIST and PCI as well. right? So we've deployed this FortiGate. I think I've got everything right, but I don't know what I don't know. The security rating service will tell you where you may have gaps in your enterprise environment with your configuration. So this is a very, very important tool. Very excited when we came out with that. So what do we do here to ensure your trust? So we're ISO 27001 compliant, right? So that's for our hardware and software practices. If you've got government regulations like FIPS 140, common criteria, or maybe you need a product that's TA compliant, we meet all of those. And then third-party wise, we have certifications from Virus Bulletin, AV Comparatives, ICSA Labs, that's a big one. A big one that's no longer around was NSS Labs. I liked their reviews in the past because they take manufacturers and they put everyone through the same test and publish the results. So it's kind of like an equal playing field between all the different manufacturers. Fortunately, they went away during COVID. Maybe somebody will come back to do that kind of testing for us. So you've got these Fortinet products and you kind of need to get up to speed. We have our own training institute. We call it the Fortinet Security Expert Program. This is available to anyone. You can sign in. It's training.fortinet.com, create an account, and all of our training is available to our customers and our partners for free. It's self-paced. You just enroll in a class, and if you want to learn more about Fortigate firewalls, we've got 20 modules just on Fortigate firewalls. If you want to learn more about SD-WAN, we have a training just for SD-WAN, how to configure your Fortigate firewall for SD-WAN. And all of our products are in here, right? So whatever product it is that you're looking at Fortinet, if you want to learn more about it for buying it, you can log into the training program and learn how to configure it, install it, how to set up all the little nuances, so you know what you're getting into before you purchase the product. We also run what we call our Fast Track program, and if you Google Fortinet Fast Track, it'll show you what's available. For our partners, we run these every Friday virtually. For customers, on the customer side, we deliver these in person in different markets. We just did one in Salt Lake City. We just did one in Denver. I think we're going to be doing one shortly in maybe Phoenix and Albuquerque. And I mentioned these territories because they're the ones that I cover, and I'm usually the one delivering these, but we have 20 different fast tracks. These are more like product feature demonstrations for something specific, like how to configure SD-WAN using FortiManager. We walk you through it. They usually take 2 or 3 hours, and it gets you a hands-on lab of our products, configuring these solutions and seeing how they work. So it's super popular. I love this program. The training's great, and we don't charge for this training either. I mentioned FortiManager, a little bit more on that. If we've got thousands of locations that we need to manage their configuration, what firmware they're on, we can do that all centrally with our FortiManager product. And we support role-based access control. So if you've got if you want to segment your administration geographically, you can do that. Or if you want to do it by business unit, we have what we call administrative domains that you can different administrators log in and they only have access to the appliances or the features of those appliances that you designate. And then our FortiAnalyzer product is our central logging and reporting tool. It supports the administrative domains as well. It's a great place to stick your Fortinet logs before you offload them to your SIM. If you're using a SIM like Splunk that charges you for storage, this is a great way to filter on the logs before you send them out to that more expensive SIM. And that's it for the presentation, which went quicker than I expected, but that gives us more time to take a look at the product and answer your questions.
Yeah, feel free, folks, to put questions in either in the chat or the Q&A window.
I've got a FortiGate 300. You can see the dashboard here. It looks like the kind of information that you'd expect to see on a firewall dashboard. CPU performance, how many sessions are going through, how much memory we're using. It estimates my bandwidth. I have the luxury of a 1 gig fiber connection. And you can see I'm barely using any of that, which is great. But one of the reasons I purchased Fortinet when I was a customer was visibility, right? So any traffic that we have going through the firewall, we can see it. And if you're using your firewall for internal segmentation, which was one of the things I wanted to do when I deployed FortiGates, that was important to me because I was using third-party tools, and I was, you know, I was pulling traffic from wherever I could to try to get in this third-party tool to visualize what was going on in my system. Fortinet does that all for you, right? So we've got that all right here. If we're using Windows in our environment, most of my customers are, we can integrate with that Windows environment. We can tell you who's on the computer. We can pull LDAP information out of Windows to enrich what you're looking at. We can also integrate with any kind of LDAP or Radius or TACX if you've got TACX deployed to do user identity management here. But we can see we've got Brian here. He's one of our top users right now for Bytes. Actually, I'm the top user because we're running the webinar right now. My traffic's passing through the firewall, but let's pick on Brian. We can see he's on a Windows 7 computer. And so far, you know, in the last 1 hour, he's downloaded 500 megs off the internet. So let's take a look at what that traffic looks like. If we drill into Brian, we can see what kind of applications that he's using, right? So he's got a little bit of YouTube in there. He's got some SoundCloud, whatever that is. He was doing a Windows update, which but if you're not running SCCM or WSUS, you might see a lot of Windows update traffic in your environment. If you're using Mac, you'll see a lot of Apple update and iTunes probably in your environment. We can see what kind of websites he's been hanging out on, which these kind of don't mean a whole lot, but like whatever, this is what he's hitting. But more importantly, since I'm doing web filtering on this user, where are my categories? I picked the wrong guy here. Let's just double check on somebody else. Actually, I think my screen just locked up. No results. Let's see what Marty's up to. He's one of my students. And Marty's working today. I have him properly configured. So we can see what kind of categories this user's hitting in our environment. And in our web filter, we have 90 different categories, and you can create your own custom categories.
Terry, can you tell us
you want to whitelist or you want to block list? You can add all of those. And I was just checking to see if he's got any of my custom categories he's hitting right now. Do not see any, but that's okay. We can see what policies he's hitting in our firewall, right? So if you're using it for internal segmentation, you can see which kind of traffic he's generating throughout your environment. Where is this user going in my environment? Well, I can see that he's going to the internet, the SD-WAN. He's going to my web servers, right? So that makes a lot of sense. I've got some resources in my DMZ. He's going to those. But everything I kind of expect to see from him. If you want to see what kind of applications are running, thank you. I'm sorry, my speaker decided to shut itself off. And Bruce,
can you hear us, Terry?
Apologize.
Can you hear us?
Hold on. Try that again.
Can you hear us okay?
Now I can hear you.
Okay.
it felt really quiet. So you had some questions?
I'm not seeing any questions that have come in yet.
Okay, very good. And I apologize if you were trying to ask me to stop or slow down or pause. If I get motoring, hard to stop. But perfect. This is a view of the applications that are going through my firewall right now. And you can see YouTube is one of those applications. If we want to see who's using YouTube in our environment, we can just double click on that. And it'll show us all the users who are using YouTube, right? And how much of it they're using. We want to see what routes we have in our system. We can see all our connected routes and the static routes we have configured. Any dynamic routing protocols, they'll show up as OSPF, BGP, ISIS, RIP. Those are the biggest ones. We support all the major ones. We're using our firewall for DHCP. We'll see everyone that we're handing out an address to, what networks they're on. If we're using this firewall for SD-WAN, we can see what kind of SD-WAN we have configured, right? What our performance is on the SD-WAN right now, what links we're going out of. We're doing site-to-site IPsec VPNs. We can monitor that environment. I mentioned that we can integrate with, LDAP, Windows, Radius. We can see our users, who do we know, either through a passive identity, like through Windows, what we call Fortinet single sign-on, or if they explicitly logged in through another LDAP type of service, or maybe through Radius. We'll tell you where we got that identity from and what we know about them, right? So for these users here, we can see what Active Directory groups they belong to, and then we can set policies based on who they are, what groups they belong to. Let's take a look at what I want to show you next is our security fabric. Kind of mentioned this at the beginning. So this is what the security fabric looks like on the Fortigate device. And you can link multiple Fortigate devices. So if you're a shop that has maybe 5 or 10 different Fortigates, you can link them all together. If you have more than 10, you probably want to use FortiManager to manage your configurations, but we can share like address objects. So if you've got an environment, we don't have a lot of Fortigates, but you see the value of sharing address objects, which that would be me when I was a customer. We can link them all together, and when you create address objects, it will share them across your whole environment. So you don't have to worry about discrepancies. And when you update, if you need to upgrade a server or some other kind of resource address, there's one place to do that. So this is our physical topology and our environment. This builds out automatically from what we know, and we keep that information in FortiAnalyzer. So that's a key piece to our fabric. But we can see that we have our core FortiGate, which we're on right here. We've got a FortiAnalyzer hanging out in our environment. We've got some WAN interfaces right here. We've got another FortiGate that we're connected to that's up in AWS, right? So that's part of our environment. We've got some switches in this environment. We've got some APs in this environment. We can see what end users, where they're at in our environment. Right, so we got a bunch of Windows machines here. If we hover over it, it'll tell us who it is, what kind of traffic they're generating. If we think there's a threat there, we can ban that IP right here. And now the firewall is no longer passing his traffic. We put a ban in there. So if we want to take them off the ban, we'll come up to our quarantine monitor. We'll see here's the endpoint I just blocked. You can see he's bland. He's got some time left on there. We're going to take him off the ban list because we did some investigation and we know whatever he was doing, it really wasn't a threat. So we'll let him back on the internet. Just like that, we found something that looked fishy, we banned him, and we opened him back up once we investigated. I had mentioned the security rating service. So this goes through the configs of all of the firewalls in your fabric environment. And it kind of gives you a rating of how you're doing. You can click on any one of these cards and it'll open up and you can say, okay, so everybody's interested in what they failed, right? So we can see what did we fail? Like what am I missing in this config that I didn't know about that maybe I should be looking at? Excuse me. So hey, it says we're using the default port for management, right? We're using just 443, and we can see that the different devices that we're doing that. So we've got our FortiGate, like 2 FortiGates, the physical one, the one in AWS. My FortiAnalyzer is using the default port, and my FortiManager is also using the default port, right? So this gives us a lot of visibility into our environment all in one place. And so what does this default port mean? So if I go to Fortinet security best practices here, expand that, it says HTTP should not use the default port, right? So where's everybody going to look? Everybody's going to look on port 443. We can also look at PCI, right? So PCI 2.4 says that we should configure security patterns to prevent misuse, right? So this could be a compliance issue for us. Here's another good one. We shouldn't allow WAN access. We shouldn't allow administrative access on a WAN port. Now, maybe you have a reason that you're doing that. Maybe it's in the cloud and that's the only way you can get to that resource. But we actually have a way that you can quick fix it, right? So if we hit apply, it'll ask us, it'll do a backup, right? So right there, we got our backup and it'll apply those changes to our environment, just like that. Now, I'd recommend, doing this in a maintenance window. Well, a little free rein here in our demo today. But it's that easy to find, security holes that we might not have been aware of. And I have a great story. When I was a Fortinet customer, I'd go to my Fortinet SE and I'd say, Edwin, I've got these Fortinets in my environment, and how do I know I've got them configured correctly and that I'm doing everything that I should be doing? And he'd say, Terry, we've got a chapter in our administrative guide called Fortinet Best Practices. Go read that and apply that to your environment. And then when I became a Fortinet engineer and I had customers asking me the same thing, I gave them the same question. So when this came out in like version 5.4 or 5.6. I was so excited. And I was so excited for my customers because if you already had a maintenance subscription, you got this feature. So that was really great. And it's something that I think sets us aside, and it's a good way to measure how you're doing before you have a threat, if you've got a hole. So the other things we can do automations, and these can be through APIs, or we've got some built-out automations. Just take a look at one here. This automations is that if one of my FortiGates reboots for whatever reason, it's going to alert me by sending an action, right? And we have these built around playbooks. So it's very easy to configure if you need to do multiple actions. Let's take a look at another one here. If our licenses are coming up, like, hey, we're 60 days out from renewal, we better remind somebody because maybe that fell through the cracks. Send out an email to whoever this alias is and say, hey, these devices are coming up for renewal. And these can be, I've got an example here. Automated backup, where we can run a CLI script, right? So this is a script that you upload to the Fortigate. We can take a look at what it looks like. And this could be any kind of sequence of command line commands that you can execute in a Fortigate to complete a task. Very versatile. You can do this on a schedule. Right on our trigger, we can do a schedule like under automated backup. What we're going to do weekly, every Monday at 2 o'clock in the morning, do an automated backup. So that's something that you can do right in the environment, just about anything you could dream of, you can create a trigger and execute a script or some of the things that we already have built in here. The fabric connectors here is how we connect all the Fortinet products throughout our environment. You can see I've got my security fabric set up. I've got our endpoint solution. I've got FortiAnalyzer. I've got some cloud logging. I've got Cloud Sandbox. I've got FortiManager. But we can also connect to external feeds, right? So here's my connection to my Active Directory environment, right? That's where I get all my user information. But we can also ingest external threat feeds, right? So I've got customers that they subscribe to their own website, allow lists. They can bring them in here and they can use them in their web filtering profiles. You can do external threat feeds, and that could be AV hashes, they can be websites, they could be IPs that you want to block. A lot of versatility. They could be your own IPs. I had a customer that they wanted to block YouTube. They didn't want their users on YouTube, but they published a monthly newsletter on YouTube. And they're like, Terry, we want to block YouTube, but how do we get our users to our YouTube channel? Well, we use this feature, and the team that created the YouTube videos just added each video to the whitelist every month, right? So they were blocked from YouTube, but they could go to their specific YouTube videos for their internal use. So that was a pretty cool use of these external threat feeds. And I'm gonna wrap on the demo here, and then we'll get to questions right after we take a look at the switch and wireless controller, because I mentioned that we have that. It's pretty easy to manage Fortinet products. You just plug them into your environment. We'll discover them and ask you if you want to authorize it for use in your environment. Once you do that, it'll just show up, right? So in my environment, I've got my Fortigate. I've got a pair of switches that I have in an MC-Lag peer group, right? So we can see where those switches physically connect. Back to my Fortigate firewall, we can see which ports connect them together, right? So I'm doing a lag for the MC-Lag. And then what other devices are in our environment? And this is built dynamically from a database that it maintains. So it's not something that you have to create. It builds it on the fly. And it does all of this automatically. So once we've got that built out, we'll build out the VLANs that we want to use in that switch environment, right? And then we'll assign those to ports, right? So right here I'll just collapse these for a second. And so we have the 4 switches that we had displayed on the topology. I'm just going to pop one open, and it's going to show us all the switch ports, right? And I can see that these first 12 switch ports have PoE. I can see what VLAN is designated for that port's native VLAN. So that's traffic that we're not going to tag going in and out of that. So that would be for like a PC or maybe a printer. We can't put VLAN tags on PCs and printers, so that's going to be their native VLAN. And then whatever, if this is another switch, or maybe it's a VMware host, where we're going to tag that traffic going up there, because that device has the ability to, we can just tell it, which networks are we going to have on that interface, or maybe all, right? We'll just include all, and we'll tag all traffic going in and out of that. So very easy to manage. But one of the coolest things about managing switches with your FortiGate using Fortinet switches. So I'm looking for an end user. Okay, I just got a help desk call from Marty. Marty's like, hey, I'm having problems with my computer and I don't see the light blinking. Well, where did we last know Marty was? So since we're doing that Active Directory integration, we can do a search and we can see, hey, Marty, he's on this Windows 10 machine here, right? And this is the information that we have about that Windows 10 machine. And he's actually connected to port 12 on this data center switch. So we need to go out there and maybe put him physically in a different switch port for whatever reason. It's very quick to identify it, or if we want to bounce that port, we can bounce that port from here. If it was PoE, we could reset the PoE, or we can just put it in a down status and then bring it back up, whatever you need to do there. So the switching and the wireless isn't quite as excited, but you can manage all your wireless. We can do bridged SSIDs down to local VLANs. We can tunnel those wireless SSIDs back to the Fortigate so they look like a virtual interface on our Fortigate. So this is great for using like guest networks or networks that we really want to keep segmented. And we don't have to worry about running those VLANs out to every switch and making sure we have the switch properly configured. So with that, I'm going to open it up. And did we get any questions in the Q&A? I'm not sure I can see that on my screen.
No, we don't have any in the Q&A
Bruce, have you been
panel yet.
monitoring that?
Yeah, I've been looking at that, so I'm not seeing any so far. Can you hear me, Terry? Terry, can you hear me?
And my speaker's off again.
There, let's try that.
And Bruce, just give me 1 second. Make sure my speaker keeps turning off, but that's life in tech. Nope, still don't have it. One more try, Bruce.
So is that better?
Yes, I'm on. No, it's my speaker. It times out for some reason.
Is it your Fortis speakers on now?
It's a Sony. If it was a Fortis speaker, maybe I could open a ticket.
Great. Yeah, no questions in yet. Anybody have any questions you want to run past Terry? Okay. Terry, thank you so much. We appreciate the walkthrough here and the demo, and amazingly, the live demo actually worked all the way through. We didn't have a single glitch there. So that's pretty amazing. That says a lot for the Fortinet products. Once again, we appreciate everyone taking time to join us today.